What's up guys, Douglas from Dougsterbob.com here, and today we're going to be talking about the 2022 Kink Gap Free Coaster. Yes, just the Free Coaster version. If you're looking for the Kink Gap or the Gap XL version, that's a different video. This one is just focused on the Free Coaster, and I'm going to be honest with you, out of the Kink Gap XL, and the Kink Gap Free Coaster, the Kink Gap Free Coaster option is the only version that I really recommend. I just don't think the quality for the price that you pay on the Gap is really worth it unless you want the cheapest Free Coaster complete BMX bike available, and that's going to be the Kink Gap Free Coaster. Stay tuned if you're looking at the Gap so that I can explain why I recommend the Gap Free Coaster and not the actual Gap. Let's get right into the video. Now the Kink Gap Free Coaster version is going to be $20 more than the Kink Gap. It's going to be $469. Now with that $469, you do get a free coaster that allows you to roll backwards without pedaling backwards, and that is pretty cool. If you've never ridden a free coaster before, I urge you to do a little bit more research and understand how the free coaster is going to actually affect your riding and what it's going to feel like. Now this only comes in one color. It comes in a matte midnight black. It looks very clean, very sleek, just like the black Kink Whip. I love how this bike looks, and I love that it comes with a free coaster because it's the cheapest free coaster bike you can get. Most bikes don't come with a free coaster until closer to that $550 or $600 price range. This one's under $500 and it comes with a free coaster. You're not going to get that from any other bike. But let's talk about the quality. So the frame is tri-moly, and what this means is the front triangle, the top tube, head tube, and down tube are chromoly, while the back tubes are high tensile steel. And this is bad for a number of reasons, but I do appreciate that Kink went ahead and tried to make the bike a little bit higher quality than just a full high tensile steel frame. A full high tensile steel frame I've bent before, nose casing a jump. So the top tube and the down tube both just bent in, and it was a terrible time. With that chromoly in the front triangle, that's not necessarily going to happen. But when you weld high tensile steel to chromoly, the weld isn't as strong because it's two different types of metal. One more issue that happens with the high tensile steel in the back end is that as you're learning spins, flat or down things, it starts to tweak. The ground and the wheel pressure constantly going in opposite directions causes that back triangle to shift over to the side like that, and this is not very good. Over time, it's just going to keep bending. So with the tri-moly frame, if you can afford it, you should go up, step up, and get the full chromoly frame like the Kink Whip, the Kink Switch, the Sunday Forecaster. Those all have full chromoly frames, which are going to be a lot better than the one that comes on this Kink Gap Free Coaster. The rims are single wall. The bars are full chromoly, but the forks are going to be chromoly steer tube. That means the steer tube's chromoly, but the legs are high tensile steel. And with high tensile steel legs, they're going to bend over time, just like that back end of the frame. As you're doing disasters, as you're nose casing dirt jumps, I mean, hopefully that doesn't happen, but it's going to happen. Those forks are going to bend in. So I don't see the hype around the chromoly steer tube, but that's just me. The single wall rims are a little bit of a bummer because when you start to do big drops or big gaps, big spins, all that stuff, they're not going to hold up to the amount of abuse that double wall rims would. So if you're riding at a mid-level, just quit watching the review here and look at something a little bit more quality, a little bit higher quality. It might be out of your budget, but it's really the best way to go because this bike can't take the beating from a mid-level rider or a high-level rider, but it is a great option. This level of quality is a great option for a brand new rider. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. It does not come with any pegs, no hub guards, and it weighs 26 pounds and 14 ounces, almost 27. This is an ounce heavier than the Kink Gap XL and the Kink Gap version. So that free coaster adds a teeny tiny bit of weight, but not very much. Now the normal Kink Gap, you get to choose between a 20.5 inch top tube and a 21 inch top tube. On the free coaster version, you only get the 20.5 inch option. There is no XL version, so you're stuck with 20.5. Double check that this is the right size for you by Googling Dougsterbob size guide. My size guide is, I'm biased, but it's the best size guide on the internet because it tells you how different sizes are going to affect your riding and how it's going to feel if you get a step up or a step down from what's recommended to you, because everything makes the riding a little bit differently. So double check that this is the right size for you before you even consider buying this bike. Getting the wrong size top tube is terrible, and it's really going to hinder your progress. Now the Chainstay is 13.25 inches. This is pretty normal. It's going to balance stability and responsiveness. It's not going to be crazy long and stable like the Cult Devotion Chainstay, but it's also not going to be really responsive and really snappy like the Kink Williams Chainstay. This is a good chainstay for beginner riders because it's not too much to control, but it's also not too big to control, if that makes any sense. This is a good chainstay size. The head tube angle is 75 degrees. This is a normal head tube angle. This is what most bikes are. You could get 75.5 and that's going to be a little bit steeper, or 74.25 is going to be really mellow. The standover height is 9 inches. This is mostly about preference, but if you get a small standover height, it's going to make tail whips a little bit easier. If you get a tall standover height, it's going to make bar spins a little bit easier, and a few other tricks, but that's about it. This is 9 inches. This is average. This is what most standover heights are. All right, so now let's talk about how it scored in the Dougsterbob scoring system. This is a system that I created to rank bikes based on how good they are for street, park, dirt, how good their quality is, and everything like that. We're gonna take a look at how the Kink Gap Free Coaster did, but if you wanna compare over 80 different bikes, you can download this exact score sheet that I use, and you can compare. You can look at all the good bikes for street, all the good bikes for park. You can look at their weights. Like, this score sheet is an incredible tool for you as a bike buyer. So if you want to download that, the link's in the description. Put in your email address and I will send you the link. And it's updated in real time. Like, I just got done updating the 2022 Cult bikes, so those are live on the score sheet now. But you just need to get it. You need to check it out. Now let's talk about how the Gap Free Coaster scored in all these different areas. Now in street, it scored a 4.75. This is going to be a lot better than the Kink Gap and the Gap XL because it has that free coaster. Now free coasters are not necessary to ride street, but a good amount of street specific tricks are easier on a free coaster. So when you get a bike with a free coaster, naturally it's going to make those street riding tricks a little bit easier, and therefore it does get bonus points when it has a free coaster. So it scored a 5. This is a pretty good street score. In park, it scored a 2.67. We're going to round this up to a 3. This isn't necessarily park specific, but you could make it that way if you added a gyro and got some more park specific tires. In dirt, it scored a 2. Now this is a little bit lower than the Gap and the Gap XL because with a free coaster, riding dirt is kind of tough. If you case your jump, you need to pedal to make up speed to clear the next jump. And with a free coaster, that's really hard to do. It also makes it a little bit harder to ride a pump track because you can't pedal, you can't get the same amount of top speed as you can. I mean, you can pedal, like I'm not saying you can't pedal, you can pedal, but the slack just makes it a lot harder to do, and it's just geared more for street riding. You want a cassette if you're gonna be pedaling a lot, you're gonna be pumping a lot, and yeah, so scored a 2 in the dirt, not the best for dirt. All right, so this bike only scored a 2.75 in the quality. We're gonna round this up to a 3, but to be honest, this is not a great quality score. You could spend just a little bit more money and get something like the Kink Whip, which scored about double the quality since it has full chromoly frame, forks, bars, double wall rims. It's just a much better bike. The only reason I would go for the Gap, even though it has this lower quality, is if you're on a really tight budget and you really want a bike with a free coaster. The Kink Whip won't have a free coaster, and so to get a higher quality bike with a free coaster, you'd have to get the Kink Switch, which is $600, and that's a lot more than the Kink Gap. So some things to consider. It scored a 3 in quality, not the best quality. Now, some potential issues that I see with the Kink Gap Free Coaster is people getting the free coaster but not understanding what it's like to ride a free coaster, how it affects their riding, and how it feels. Free coasters are really different than cassettes, and so do some research, make sure that you understand what it's going to feel like and how it's different from a cassette before you pull the trigger on this bike. I like free coasters, but I also like cassettes, so I could never ride just a free coaster. I'd have to be able to switch back and forth. whether that means having a second wheel or I don't know, but I couldn't ride just a free coaster because it takes away a lot of the tricks that I like to do. They're a lot harder on a free coaster. So just make sure you understand a free coaster and what it's going to be like and what it's going to feel like. That's the only real potential issue I see with it, aside from the lower quality parts breaking as you progress to be a high level rider. So who's the Kink Gap free coaster for? This is going to be for somebody who really likes to ride street at a beginner level. Like, you probably have dreams of progressing to be a mid or high level rider, but right now you're riding at a beginner level. You only have a budget of about $470 and you want a free coaster. If that sounds like you, this is probably a pretty solid bike. Would I recommend it? The answer is going to be yes. If you're looking for an affordable bike that comes with a free coaster, the Kink Gap free coaster is an incredible option for you. Even though you could spend a little bit more money and get the Kink Whip, the Whip is not going to have that free coaster. So I do recommend the Kink Gap free coaster, but I don't necessarily recommend the Kink Gap and the Kink Gap XL because I think it's better to just spend the extra money and get the higher quality Whip if you were considering the Gap or the Gap XL. If you're considering the free coaster, I do think this is a good bike for you and I would definitely recommend it. Now, if you're like, oh cool, this is the right bike for me, I'm gonna buy it, click the link in the description. That link is probably gonna send you to Danscomp because I have a really good relationship with them and they offer some of the best prices. Usually they're the best price shop that I can find anywhere on the internet. If you find it cheaper somewhere else, let me know so I can update it, but Danscomp is always solid on the pricing. And you get free shipping on orders over 100. That's crazy. So anyway, if you're thinking about buying it, buy it through that link. It helps the channel out a lot. Now, if you decide this isn't right for you and you're still looking for the perfect BMX bike, I have a free BMX bike recommendation. The way that this works is you fill out the form. You put in your height, your budget, your skill level, what type of riding you like, and I'll take a look at that. I'll make a PDF and I'll recommend 3 bikes that I think are perfect for you and I'll send it back to you. Be patient. This takes me about a day, but it's one of the most helpful things that you can do while you're shopping for your BMX bike because usually I get you some bikes that are perfect for you, and that's what this is all about. So hit the link in the description, fill out that recommendation, and then leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the Kink Gap XL and which bike I should review next. Thank you so much for being a part of the Dougsterbob community. If you heart BMX, make sure you pick up one of these t-shirts. The link is also in the description. Have a great rest of your day.